Welcome, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President, Africa Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, and also our host here for the Africa Green Revolution Forum, flanked by, on your left, His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania and a board member of AGRA. And on your right, Dr. Kalibata, is former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn. He's the chair of the AGRF Partners Board. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a hectic day, but you know we have to go to the finish line. And Dr. Kalibata, let me start with you and ask you, can we achieve the goal of eliminating hunger in Africa by 2030? Can we achieve that?
Thank you, Jeff. That's a difficult one to answer right now, given that we have hunger numbers increasing every year. Now, this year alone, we saw 161 million people go into hunger. We now have 257 million Africans hungry. But we also know what to do. It's not that we don't know what to do. We have a framework on this continent, the CAADP framework, that we've agreed on, where heads of state, if they invested right in the agricultural sector, if they invested right in food systems, we definitely will be able to deliver. And there's evidence. Countries that have invested in food systems have not only been able to feed their countries, they've actually seen economic growth, unprecedented economic growth coming from food. It has been said we need better seeds for farmers, we need fertilizer and soil fertility management, we need irrigation, we need mechanization. And those things, if we invested at 10%, those things will be real. We need access to finance. At AGRA, we do a whole lot of work to ensure that farmers have access to inputs. We do a whole lot of work to ensure that systems that take inputs to farmers are working. But what is missing, what we keep seeing over and over and over, is that without the right levels of access to funding for businesses to grow, without the right levels of funding for farming communities to access financing so that they can grow their businesses, it's really going to be very difficult. But today, the reason I hesitated at the beginning when you asked me the question, we are walking up a huge cliff. We have climate change. Things that we were doing 3, 4, 5 years ago, since 2013, in fact, we've been seeing every 2 seasons, one season is failed because of climate change. That is 50% loss for us, where other people are talking about 12% loss. We cannot afford that type of loss. So we need to invest even more, double down on investments. So achieving hunger by 2030 is really going to depend on how leaders invest for farmers to access technologies, on how leaders invest for businesses to access funding. And I'm seated between the two very best that on this continent. Haile Mariam did a great job in Ethiopia. They had 6% growth every year coming from agricultural systems, from supporting the development of the agricultural sector. He already knows. President Kikwete was responsible for supporting private sector development under the Grow Africa initiative. And we've seen lots of businesses in Tanzania, in the Kilombero Valley and many other places grow because of the initiatives he started. So it's not like Africa doesn't have live examples on how to end hunger. We have to double down on investments. Going to the Food Systems Summit, if leaders did one thing, it's doubling down on investment to end hunger.
Let me ask the gentleman sitting on either side of you, President Kikwete, you first. Can we eliminate hunger? Can we do that by 2030 on the continent?
Can
we eliminate hunger?
Of course, the hunger ultimately will be eliminated. Giving an exact timing of 2030, that's the SADG objective.
Yes.
Zero hunger by 2030. Well, of course, on the African continent, what we should realize is we are starting at a very low levels of development. As the leaders have been saying, we need to do more. And as Agnes has said, we really need to do more. Because when you look at, when I was president, the Tanzanian economy has been growing at 7% on the average in the 10 years I was president and 10 years before me with President Mkapa. But poverty reduction rate very minimal, 2%, so on. So one day I was sitting with my economic team and we were discussing, why is the growth rate is 7%, but poverty reduction rate is so minimal? It is not to that level. And then at the end of the day, they tell me, look, President, let's look at the structure of this growth. Mobile phone penetration, 25% growth rate, financial intermediation, over 10%, transit trade, and so on. But when you look at agriculture, it's 4%. So that is, they say that this is where the poverty is. Agriculture is the mainstay of 70% of the population, and it grows at 4%. And economists are saying when an economy grows at 7% for 10 years, the GDP doubles. So whereas the GDP of Tanzania doubled, but agriculture itself remained low. So that's where we had really to really focus, identify what are the constraints to growth on the agricultural sector. So we took a stock, we came up with the Agricultural Sector Development Program. And of course identified, one of them is, we still depend on the hand hoe. I was looking at it this morning. I asked people from AGRA to give me the statistics, the African statistics. 80% of the land in Africa is tilled using the hand hoe. 15% by oxen, and 5% using tractors. So of course, moving from the oxen, from the hand hoe to the oxen plow is an advancement, but using oxen plow is there in the Bible 2,000 years ago. So for us moving from the hand hoe to the oxen plow is something that was done over 2,000 years ago. So we have to mechanize our agriculture. That's one thing. But mechanization itself, as I say, there are so many other factors. We depend on rain. I think the very little of Africa's agriculture is irrigated. We depend on God's rain, and with climate change. Well, last year I plowed 40 acres. I sowed the seeds. The rains didn't come. This year I did 31 acres. I sowed the seeds. The rains came and left. So the maize crop was this high. That is where it ended. So continuing to depend on rain-fed agriculture is a problem.
Okay, let me go to Prime Minister here and ask you this question. What needs to change for us to create the food systems we want, the food systems we need on the continent? What needs to change?
Thank you very much, Jeff. I think there are lots of things that has to be changed. The first thing is the mindset. In Africa, when you see best practices elsewhere, it's because people are very much aggressive in producing, and then also working throughout the value chain and resolving the binding constraints that exist within the value chain. And that needs leadership. So the mindset of the leadership also has to change. So Jeff, I think when we talk about change, we have to talk about also the way we partner has to change. The collaboration is needed. You can't make it by your own alone. Starting from household up to the nation, there should be a clear structure where you partner, and there should be an accountability to each one of the partners in the process. So I think that's a great thing we have to work in order to change. A good example is we started in Ethiopia focusing on the household. So if you change the individual household to be productive, usually, in an African setting, it's a family farming. And if the mother, father, children all cooperate to have a change in the system and involve our young people in agriculture, which they are now trying to get out of this sector, because the thinking is that agriculture is a backward production system. So as the president was saying, President Kenyatta was saying this afternoon, that changing the mindset of our young people, using the existing technology, appropriate technology in the farming system, can help us to change the livelihood of individual households. Otherwise, we can't achieve, ending hunger, because hunger is in the household. So I think we need to change that one as well. But above all, the global system has to be equitable. And we need to have a system that serves all the global citizens equally. And so our trading systems has to be equitable and somehow address the shortcomings of the system within. But it's not easy, but when you see the calamities and the challenges we are facing, as the president was early saying, the climate change issue and the pandemic which we are facing now, even much more greater challenges that are coming because of the biodiversity loss and unsustainable production systems. We have to change all those things. So I think we need not just an incremental change, but a transformative change.
Dr. Kalibata, you're the United Nations Secretary General's Special Envoy for Food Systems Summit. What needs to change in our food systems? What needs to change for us to turn things around?
So we need to recognize one thing: the cost of doing nothing, or the cost of doing the wrong things. We spend so much money every year dealing with malnutrition that could have been dealt with as food. We spend so much money every year now dealing with diet-related diseases. We spend so much money dealing with environmental damage. So we need to step back and ask ourselves, how do we need to invest differently? How do we need to invest from a food systems approach? And just to give you a very brief example, in Rwanda, we moved $6 million from the health budget to invest with an investor to ensure that that money goes into producing baby food for the first 1,000 days. That way you ensure that those children are not going to be your problem from a health perspective. Right? So you save the children by doing the right forms of investments. So agriculture needs to be looked at as a system from a health perspective, a system from an environmental perspective, because we are causing environmental damage. We are wasting so much food, but also a system from a prosperity perspective. For goodness sake, this is a sector that in the rest of the world is a huge business. And for us, it's a source of poverty. How is it possible that a sector that in other parts of the world, people leave their businesses to join us, we are in the sector just because we have nothing else to do? That's the challenge that Africa needs to sort out. Let's get our skills right in the agriculture sector. Let's get our capacities right by investing, but also let's do the right thing.
Absolutely. President Kikwete, you mentioned a moment ago, it took us 2,000 years to go from the hoe to the oxen. Is the agricultural sector moving too slow, or what should we do differently?
Well, I think, one, as I said, it's a question of policy, and the policy space. One, identify the constraints correctly, and then put in place the right interventions to deal with those problems. For example, take the case of Tanzania. When I was president, we wanted to get food self-sufficiency. And how do you get there? Of course, there was crop subsidy, where there was input subsidies. For subsidy for fertilizers and seeds. But also we said, let's concentrate in those areas where if we invest, we're going to get bigger returns. And we chose the regions where there is rainfall reliability. The southern what we call the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania. We took 6 regions where in other regions there may be shortfalls in rains, like in my part, but these are regions where, like a place like Tukuyu, where there is rainfall from January to December. So we focused on these areas. Fortunately, you can grow rice because there are river valleys there. You can grow maize, which are main staple. We invested in those 6 regions, and we were able to get to food self-sufficiency in the country in terms of when you look at the amount of food produced and the population. But then within the country, there are areas which are not that lucky. So the issue here has been how to build the infrastructure to be able to move the food from the places where we built these big silos, the granaries, and to those other places. I think that's one. So because where we said, as the English say, put your hand where your mouth is. We say, let's concentrate in these areas, invest in these areas. We are going to get the surpluses that is one. But we do not forget the other areas where they are disadvantaged. So that this is where the issue of agricultural research, seed research, where you get the right type of seeds, right drought resistant or pests. We did a lot of work. For example, cassava has had a big problem of cassava mosaic. I think they're depleting the crop. So the certain areas you do the right interventions, identify the problems and do the right interventions at policy level. That's one of the areas.
Okay, hold that thought, Mr. President. You each get 2 minutes to answer this question. So think about it real quick. Prime Minister, you first. Is there hope for the continent going forward, or is this going to be an uphill climb? Is there hope?
I think I can combine the two. There is hope, but you have to climb the uphill. There is no easy way. There is no shortcut. We have to struggle, and we have to strive to reach that level of achievement. And it needs commitment from leadership, political leadership, technocratic leadership, and as well as partners who are working with us. I think I am hopeful because there are many other continents who achieved zero hunger. Brazil, for example, they have a zero hunger program, and they achieved it. And the whole Asian countries, almost all of them achieved. So why not Africa? It's the only thing is we don't need to reinvent the wheel in many cases, but our challenges are different, because of the climate change that is very aggressively disturbing the whole system. We need to adapt to that situation as well. But there is hope. There is a great hope.
Yeah, Dr. Kalibata, I'll let you have the last word. So, President Kikwete, hope, uphill climb, your thoughts going forward?
Well, there is a lot of hope. There is a lot of hope. We can't give up. As I said, because we initiated a number of interventions, and they seemed to be working. We found out, for example, that the private sector is not very much involved. So in the system, we have what we call the Tanzania National Business Council, where the president sits with the business. And we had serious discussions on agriculture and agreed that let's make agriculture is the number one thing. Kilimo kwanza. And now let's involve the private sector actively in the transformation of agriculture. Buy from the farmers, make sure that inputs are available, support farmers with finance and credit. So, with these kind of interventions, as I'm saying, we have been seeing that food production has been increasing. Well, there are still challenges. We still have challenges. Definitely, a lot more needs to be done. That's where the climbing is. But if we have been able to make some of these initial interventions or some interventions which have proved successful, what we need is a scale up. If we scale up, we may be able to get to a point where not be a food basket country.
Dr. Agnes Kalibata, you get the final word.
No, there's a very good reason to believe that there's hope. I mean, just remember that before COVID-19 and before climate change, which happened before COVID-19, Africa was the fastest growing continent, and a lot of that growth was coming from the agriculture sector. So there's hope. But the climb is going to be easy because of two reasons. Yes, there's a climb, and the climb can be much easier because of two reasons. We have young people. 11 million youth in Africa graduate every year. Only 25% get jobs. So those people can be harnessed. These are people that can be harnessed for the continent to do better. Number two, we have a huge amount of SMEs that are just ready to go. They already do 64% of the food in the cities comes from SMEs. 80% of the food we produce on this continent is moved around by SMEs. So that's another place of hope. But the most important place of hope, probably in addition to youth, is the fact that we are not the first ones to do this. There are technologies and technologies and technologies, and they get better every day. We can do this, but we need leadership. We need political leadership. We need investments to follow that political leadership.
Absolutely. Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President Jakaya Kikwete, Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, thank you so much for your time. Great conversation, great chat.
Thank you.
All the very best going forward.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Tashiba too.
Whoa.